Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 4 here on The Voice Only I Hear. So, just a quick recap for those of you that may be new. This is a story or a novel that I'm trying to write, uh, sort of on YouTube and go through the workings out and how I do things and how I get to, to places that I get within the story and, you know, bring sort of you guys along for the ride, because there may be people out there like me that sort of kind of have often thought, well, I would like to write a book, or I've got a story that I want to tell, or whatever, but I don't really know how to go on. As I've said before, this isn't a how-to. I'm not paid. I'm not a published writer. I'm not a teacher in any way, shape, or form. So this isn't a how to do a novel. This is how I do my stories and how I'm doing this story, because as I say, this one I want to take all the way through to the end, and then what I want to do is I want to submit it for publishing and see where we get. And who knows, we may get joy or we may get disappointment at first, but then we just literally go again, and we go from there. So the last two episodes, last week's was Kay's introduction and how I came up with the character Kay and what she is to the story and what she is to the other characters, in the book. And then the week before that, we did Mara, and we did those two characters in a very similar way. And this is just another way that you can do a character. So it's kind of a character profile. With the first two, we kind of dropped them into scenarios and we learned a little bit about them. Those are the two characters will have a character profile like this. So a character profile is where you've come up with a character you quite like, one thing about their character, or don't like something about their character, and you think, yeah, I want them in my story. Then you need to start asking yourself questions. And as we go through, you'll see, the questions that I ask myself. And you can go a lot more deeper if you want to, but for the type of story that we're doing, we don't need to go that deep with Dan, mainly because although he's prominent throughout the story, the actual sort of, if you like, focus of the story is on how James manages himself with Kay, how they interact with one another, and the dynamic that they build for the story. Everyone else that's in the story comes kind of in and out. They all have their sort of spotlight moments where the story is centered solely on them. And then at the end, or near the end, all of those characters that we've got collide, and we see what chaos unfurls, and how the story is resolved, and the way we go. Now, I will say this: I'm not going to give anything away towards, at the moment, what I'm leaning towards my ending. I'm not a writer that dresses everything up really pretty at the end. Okay, that is not the world we live in. That is not the world I live in. And the good people don't always win, and I feel that's important. I also feel it may be a reason why I've never been published, because the sort of the consensus is that the good guy always needs to win. You name me a situation in real life, in our day-to-day lives, where we, as the good guys, in terms of we do everything right, we pay our taxes, we do this, and we conform, and we say the things we should say, we don't say the things we shouldn't say, and yet somehow we never seem to win. And that's how my stories are. The good guys don't always win. And as I say, so I just kind of want you to bear that in mind. I like to write truth, and I like to write not to shock, but to show everyone that just because life doesn't always go the way we want, it doesn't mean it's not worth living. It doesn't mean it's not worth experiencing. So that's what I do. But anyway, we're going to crack on with Dan, and we'll see where we go. So the voice only I hear, as you know, if I can just find my cursor, because it really will help me to write. There we go, to read. Sorry. So the voice only I hear. Character profile, Dan Reeve. So the basic details of this: his full name is Detective Daniel Reeve. He's aged 47. Occupation, senior homicide detective. Relationship status, married to Mara Reeve. Estranged, secretly hostile. Now, that has slightly changed. So you start asking yourself questions. You start asking your character questions, and then you begin to sort of think, well, actually, this will fit better. So they were married. They're not married now. Mara, for those that have been following, was in a relationship up until sort of the start of the story. Well, even including the start of the story, James and Mara are still in a relationship, but Kay's coming in, and Kay is beginning to take prominence over Mara. So, as I say, when we start the story, you'll that will make sense. So he's married to Mara Reeve, estranged, secretly hostile, but they're no longer married. So they were married when all of this story kicked off. They were married. They were very much married as well, but not necessarily married for love. I would say more for perception of what we believe people want to see, should see, and what people want to believe is not necessarily what's going on. So in public, his public persona, he's well spoken, authoritative, respected by media and peers. Private reality, he's calculating, remorseless, manipulative, deeply insecure, and that also fits for Mara as well. And that's where I sort of kind of say that they kind of don't marry for love, they marry for the benefit of themselves, because she is very similar, and they kind of sort of team up knowing they can get pretty much what they want through the way that they are. So core personality traits. So I've set this out as a little bit of a graph, and for those of you that are interested, I don't know if it says it somewhere up there, but I use LibreOffice as the writing tool of choice, and on that you can obviously set graphs and tables and stuff like that. So trait versus description. So trait compartmentalizes, masters emotional detachment, treats relationships and crimes as files to be managed. And then we've got charming, performs sincerity effortlessly, using charisma to deflect suspicion. Cold-blooded, no moral conflict about covering up murders or manipulating people. Hyper-aware, sees meaning in every glance, every painting, especially when it's about him, that every painting about him will become very clear in the actual story. Territorial, hates exposure, control is everything, even in personal relationships. Strategic, always 3 steps ahead, especially when threats begin to circle. And then we've got narrative function. So an antagonist by silence, his menace comes not from over action but from quiet pressure. Represents rot beneath authority, a man who embodies corruption through charm. Catalyst for Kay's awakening, his presence triggers memories and truth. Key relationships, Mara Reeve, wife, their marriage is an uneasy alliance. She struck first, he covered it up, now they orbit each other like cold stars, bound by guilt and self-preservation. Sophie. Now, Sophie is a character that we've not met, because Sophie is only ever referred to as the third person, because when this story gets going, she's already dead. So she is referred to, as I say, in the not the third person, the past tense is what I meant. She's always referred to in the past tense. So Sophie and Kay were best friends, and you'll see why that's important for the story as well when we get right in the story. So Sophie, affair. He used her, she saw through him, her death was damage control. K, initially unknown to him, now an unpredictable threat. Her art is revealing what she witnessed, and he's both terrified and fascinated by her subconscious reach. James, former lover of Mara. Now, as I say, that has changed a little bit. So before when the story originally got kind of written in sort of, or not really short story form, it was a bit longer than that. It was kind of the bit between a short story and a novel. It was kind of in between the two, and it kind of ended up being nothing really in terms of it was just a story, but it's a story that I really like, and I really like the layers, and I think I've probably got a little bit more confidence to write it properly, and I've also probably got a little bit more unworried by what people may think about the things that I write. It's not that I don't care, but I have a story, it needs telling, and like I said just a few minutes earlier, the good guys don't always win. And actually, when people see truth, it scares them. It's better to believe the lie or the perception of a lie than it is to believe the truth. Yeah, as I say, James, former lover, but he's now lover of Mara, so he comes after Dan, not former. So I should have actually changed that before I read it out. But as I say, he's now the lover of Mara. Now deeply tied to Kay. So Kay comes into his life through how we discussed last week, and we set examples of how we balance her being in the story and in James's life without her actually being present, because Kay is also at that point never in the now story. She's never living. She's always, in James's eyes, imagined, but we become to realise that she actually was alive once, and she's trying to uncover why she was killed, who killed her, and why they killed her. So Dan sees James as a wild card, emotional, sincere, and dangerous by association, and that's association by both by Kay and by Mara. So defining characteristics: voice, smooth, measured, rarely raised, commands a room by being calmly present. Appearance: sharp suit, subtle tie clips, always polished, nothing is accidental. Behavioural tells, and I've spelled behavioural wrong. Touches his wedding ring when confronted. So he's never taken the wedding ring off, even though he's actually in a relationship with someone else. But again, that will become relevant in the actual story. Never looks directly at Kay's most revealing artwork. Often finishes other people's sentences to maintain control. Smiles when nervous, but only with the mouth. Explosive potential. If exposed, Dan doesn't plead, he pivots. Blame, deflection, and charm. If cornered, emotionally, he turns clinical. Feelings are tools. His unravelling won't be loud, it will be surgical. Disassembling others piece by piece to preserve himself. So, as I say, that's kind of met Dan, in terms of I've just written down a few things that I kind of need to know about Dan. So when I'm writing, I will always refer to this now. So if it's about, say, his job, obviously I've got it written there. And basically what that does is it will stop you from having to reread. If you're 40 pages in and then suddenly can't remember a detail about whether you've written a specific detail about a character or what, it means you've got to reread it until you can find out whether actually you did include it or didn't include it. If you have it written down like this, I find it stops you having to reread. You just refer to this. Oh yes, that's relationship status. Yeah. I've got where he is now. And then what happens is that if I do mention something, but it's likely to be mentioned again, I'll just put either an M next to it, I'll put a line next to it, or an asterisk or something like that, or a hashtag or whatever. and that will then sort of kind of tell me, yes, I've already mentioned this within the story, but feel free to mention it again because it's probably relevant at the time of mentioning it. So it means that I always know roughly with each character where I am with them. So that's like a sort of little tip that I would give anyone that's looking to sort of write, is to have these set out. And I've got others that are set out very similar. And as I say, and then the next episode will be where we sort of get down to the last bit now before writing, and that is chapter plans, story arcs, and then within that, potential conflicts, potential sort of kind of boiling points where these characters, although they may not know each other, but they collide and they begin to form their opinions of each other. And then that will get unraveled as the story goes on. So, as I say, it's not a how-to, because I'm not paid. I'm not, you know, uh, for the want of a better expression, I'm not educated in the way that should be allowed to teach. I'm self-taught. I've been writing, as I've said before, since I was 10. And what started me writing was grief. What's kept me writing is loneliness, is grief, is isolation. Coupled with the loneliness, and because isolation, because I kind of feel no one really gets me, and loneliness because even when I have been with partners in the past, or just people in general, I still feel like I'm alone within a group. It's just the way I am, and like I say, I see things in life that a lot of people, I feel, and a lot of writers, a lot of current writers. I mean, I've stopped reading now because they go, oh, you should all, if you want to write, you should read, at least, one book a week or whatever. For me, load of codswallop, not really, because what happens, I find, for me personally, is that my opinion gets biased by the things that I read. And I don't like to be biased or influenced. I like to be independent. I like to have my own thoughts on things. I like to see different things from my own point of view. So I don't go with the notion that, you have to read, a book or 10 books a week or a month or whatever it is that, that I hear writers, on podcasts and different things, writers where they come on and go, yeah, yeah. So, well, I read, every day. I always take a book on holiday. It's like, you take a book on holiday and you read every day. It's like you're on holiday. It's supposed to be a rest from everything you do normally and change the scenery. As a writer, that tells me you're writing what you read, and you're influenced by what you read. As a writer, when I go out for the day, or when I go on holiday, or when I go, do something different, I look at it through my eyes. If I get an idea in this book, oh, this scene happens here, well, I'll go to the place and I will actually see the place for myself. And then try and tell the story from my own perspective, from my own point of view. A very interesting thing that happened probably about a year ago now. I was sat. No, it's a couple of years ago now. Actually, it was probably about 2 years ago. No, it was last year. It was last year. It was last year. So last year, I decided to take myself for a few days to stay in Dunoon, which is in Scotland. It's a beautiful fishing sort of town or village or whatever, but community is the word I was looking for. And absolutely stunning views. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. Scotland is an amazingly beautiful place, full stop. But Dunoon really did capture my imagination. And I remember this particular day. It was a nice day. It wasn't particularly hot. It was probably about, sort of 20, 23 degrees, something like that. And I was just sat, at a cafe, quite near the seafront, and I was looking at the ferries, and I was looking at, the mountains and the water and the people just sort of milling around, and thinking that I was kind of alone, and that no one else in the world was anywhere near me. I'm sort of writing what I'm seeing and writing details because, if they come up in a book, it will be handy to have. And these these two women came up to me and said, you know, in their beautiful Scottish accent, sort of came over to me and said, you know, I don't know if you realise that you're doing it, but you're actually talking out loud. And they said, like, and we're kind of been listening while we drink our coffee, what you're sort of writing, and what you're saying and everything like that. And they said, like, it sounds really interesting. Are you a writer? And I said, well, I'm a writer in the sense that I write, but not in the sense that I'm published, or Stephen King, or something like that. Um, um and one of the women said to me, what are you writing? So I said, oh, I'm just writing this scene where these three characters are kind of, I said that they're not sure whether they're in conflict with each other, or whether they're kind of building rapport with each other and relationships with each other, or kind of what. I said, and I'm trying to see what the dynamics is. I'm trying to see why they're there, why they're doing what they're doing. I said, like that, as a sort of, as I call myself, a hobbyist writer. I said, like, it's important for the story. When I go back home, I need to photograph this in words so that I can use it in my writing. And what happened was, these two women from nowhere just took on the characters of the two women that I was writing about, and we ended up playing out several scenes of a story that I hadn't even thought of, and I mean, they were, sort of modern in the fact. I mean, I've got a modern phone now, a smartphone, or whatever you call it now, because eventually my brother's, sort of persistence in that I needed to get with the real world and with the modern world, sort of eventually, after about, sort of 10 years, broke through, and I gave in and got one. And by the way, I love it. But they had smartphones, and what they did was they recorded it. So from sort of like two different angles, and then emailed me the videos, which is really good. And if I've still got them, I'll include them in either this episode, or I'll do a separate video upon it. And yeah, we sort of kind of, in the end, the three of us acted out this scene, and it was really, really good. But it really gave a sense of place, belonging, and also, as well, it gave two characters that I hadn't done any of this to, that I was just sort of sketching, if you like, and it gave them personality, and it gave them their own voice, and it gave them, their own independencies, which, and idiosyncrasies that everyone has. And so I really, sort of really appreciate the two women, who subsequently I met again the following day when I was on the ferry going over to Gore Rock, and as I say, we kind of sort of hung out for half a day. We had a bit of lunch, and it was very nice. And as I say, I mean, they were a couple. They were a couple, but they were two very lovely women, and really, I was really, blessed to have, sort of been given, by pure chance, the chance to meet them, and to, sort of in a way work with them. So it's fantastic. But anyway, that's where I'm going to leave this episode, short and sweet. And as I say, we've now got Dan, we've got Mara, we've got Kay, we've got James, obviously, and we're now going to start to, in the next episode, get the chapter plan. So it's important to do a chapter plan, and then we get the story arcs, and then we get what I call the story arc branches, which is, you'll always find that the story will branch slightly away from The arcs that you set out, they're just guides. They're not set in stone. They're fluid, if you like. They can move. They can swap places. They can move around. They can form into a different shape. But you just need that visual clue as to kind of, if you do start to write yourself into writer's block or into a bit where you can't sort of get out of it, just refer back to the arc, refer back to the chapter plan and think, okay, I'm going to leave that there. I'm now going to go off and write this, and then I'll try and tie those two together, or try and tie it in with the story. So it's always very important to have that. But anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed the episode. I hope you're getting something out of them. And I really do look forward to seeing you again next week. If you did like this episode, why not hit the thumbs up button? It's really nice for me to see that people like what I'm doing. And also, if you like me and you like listening and you're invested and you're interested to see how this all kind of plays out in the end, then why not subscribe? Again, for a small content creator, a small channel like this, having subscriptions and having people subscribe is really heartwarming, and really makes it all worthwhile. So I'd be really grateful. But anyway, thanks ever so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you again next week. Bye for now.